Well, hey everybody, my name's Jared. I'm one of the pastors here at Restoration Church. This week we're in week 3 of our Fresh Start series. Fresh Start, or Starting Fresh Socially. And here's the reality. Out of all the things we're going to talk about, starting fresh socially, depending on who you are, where you live, maybe what generation you're a part of, or the people in your life, this is one of the most difficult ones for our society, at least statistically, to admit we need help with. I think most people, if we're honest, most people are looking for friends constantly. And I'm not just talking about like freaky extroverts like Poppy from Trolls, who's just always happy and just seems to ask personal questions at any point, always has the right gift. I'm not talking about just people like that. I think everybody is at all times desperately, in some ways, looking for other people. And one of the biggest hindrances to finding friends is this. And this is not profound enough to make the screen, but one of the biggest hindrances to finding friends today is admitting that we would like or we need more friends. Seriously. That's the biggest hindrance. That what often stops us is that because if I need friends right now, in 2024, if I am feeling lonely, if I'm feeling like left out or rejected by people in my life, this is the first time in history, or maybe not the first time, but this is a time in history where I don't have to fill the void for people with people, if that makes sense. Like, it's been happening for a while, but if I am feeling lonely, rejected, or I just don't feel like doing the things to socially, get out there, I don't have to. I can numb myself with this computer in my pocket, this phone. I can get on a dating app. I can literally watch any movie, endless hours of entertainment to numb myself. I can order off Amazon and have things that I want. I can get that dopamine hit, and they will be at my doorstep in 2 days. I can even order the batteries for the thing that I'm ordering. If I really want to interact with people, I can go on some sort of social media. And I can interact, but only at the level in which I know I won't be hurt. I don't have to offer anything. I can even live a lie. But if I'm really going to fill that void socially for myself, if I'm really going to have healthy relationships, that's not going to work. And stats have shown us that it doesn't work. They've shown that actually what it does is it just increases an addiction and makes that void even bigger. And you can just Google on your own, loneliness epidemic or loneliest generations. And they will say that every generation other than senior adults playing pickleball in Florida are lonely right now. So what do we do about that? Well, we have to define relationships. Because if we're going to start fresh socially, we actually have to come up with an actual definition that is not too cheap to be worth it. So here's the definition of right or good relationship today. And it's not over-spiritualized or Bible verse or anything. It's this. You were designed by God for relationship, to know and be known by someone you trust. Relationship, or right relationship, is to know, meaning you know them, and be known by someone you trust. Now, I'm 42 years old, I think, and I have had relationships in my life. And I've been a pastor. I've been an extrovert most of my life, other than maybe some hurt years where I tried to do something a little different, but realized pretty quick, I get energized from being around people. People are my favorite, right? Buddy the Elf style, maybe a little bit less commercialized there. But I love people. But here's what happens when you love people. It doesn't mean just because you're surrounded by people that people know you or that people like you. And I figured out as a pastor, I work at a gym where I interact with hundreds of people a week too. And I have friends from places we've been and people that we hang out with, and even here, obviously. But I've learned that there's three kinds of friendships or three kinds of relationships that you have when you're a leader. And when I say a leader, I mean like a boss. I could mean a parent. I could mean you just lead maybe a home, any level of leadership where you have responsibility for yourself. You even could be the leader of your dogs at home. Any sort of leadership, there's three kinds of relationships. And if you apply this to dogs, it might even be funnier. But I mean people when I say this. First one. You're going to have people that like you, but they don't really know you. Does that make sense? They like you. They like being around you. You interact with them, and it's a good interaction. But it's very surface level. It's very safe. Maybe because of time spent, like you don't really see them. It's the person at the coffee shop, your favorite barista. You don't sit there and cry together. You don't hang out in intimate moments. They like you. You like them, but they don't really know you. That's number one, and you can just flip it and know the next one. The next one is someone knows you, and they don't like you. And I don't mean like they don't like you like an enemy. I'm not going like David's writing in Psalms that like my enemies are all around me. I don't mean that. I just mean that like you don't connect. Or it could mean if you've got people in your life that if they knew this about me, they wouldn't want to have anything to do with me. There's insecurity there. This idea like it might even be easier if I just have people that like me but don't really know me. Because I have people in my life who know me and they don't really like me or they don't really want to be around me. And let's be honest, you have people like that too. That once you got to know about that weird collection they have in their basement, right? You went, maybe I'll text you, right? Like maybe we'll meet at my house next time. But then, of course, there's the third level, the third definition that we can have of relationships when you're any sort of leader, and that's people that know you and like you. And I went through so many years of my life without that. And I didn't realize that what was missing in my life. I had lots of people, take it or leave it. I'm a sarcastic guy. I have a dry humor about me. I like to go at 100 miles an hour. I have so many faults. And I actually, at one point in my life, had no problem letting people know my faults. But then I got really hurt. We got really hurt. This was in my 20s. And it happens, right? That's the price and cost of love and risk. And to be known, you have to let people know you. And one of the reasons that we don't have relationships today at times is because we've been hurt. We let someone know us and we taste that rejection. But when you've tasted that rejection, isn't it so much sweeter when you have people who know you, and I'll add a word, and still like you? Now the story that we're looking at today, this is a true story in Acts chapter 9 where Saul, this is called Saul's conversion in the English translation. It's labeled that. Those were not in the original writing, but Saul's conversion. When Saul, the terrorist, who was sanctioned by the government and by the religious leaders to kill followers of Jesus, when Saul, the terrorist, became Paul, the Christian, Paul, the follower of Jesus, became part of the group that he was murdering and arresting. It's an incredible story of God intervening. It's the kind of prayer that we have for people that we know. Maybe the people that know us but don't like us. We're praying that prayer for them. But today, I don't want to focus simply on Paul's spiritual conversion. I want to focus on the social aspects of what happened to Paul or Saul. In case you're confused, it's the same person. That after his conversion, he became known by the name Paul instead of Saul, simply to signal like a new part of his life. Maybe like today we might understand that like you have a different nickname than when you were younger. Maybe some of the lifestyle you had, you're like, I don't go by that nickname anymore. But this was his real name. In a matter of 3 days, Paul, or Saul here, became lonelier than you could ever imagine. He was on top of the world. He had power. He was like the people that are running for office right now. He had followers. He had power. He had people that were giving him what he wanted. And he was doing, this is the crazy part, he was doing what he believed that God wanted him to do. Because it made sense. Everything on paper made sense. Everything he was raised to believe, which had nothing to do with Jesus, led him to believe that murdering Christians, that arresting and breaking up these churches was what God would want him to do. Now, does he ever say, like, well, God did tell me to do that? No. But isn't it so easy sometimes to do what we want to do, what feels like we should be doing, and kind of put God's name on it? Sometimes I do that with things God had me do at one point, but it doesn't mean that he still wants me to do that. In the depth of Paul's loneliness, as he was literally blind, you could say he was in a dark place, God was about to reveal the power of a faithful friend, or faithful friends to him. The aspects of friendship that I think that Paul needed, that what we learn from Paul's other writings later is that he wasn't the most gentle person. He was actually a pretty direct person. That actually, like, he had people that were loyal and loving to him later, that it wasn't because he was like a soft and warm person who was like remembering their birthday and like, texting them, when they went through a tough time. Like, Saul was a pretty rough guy, but still needed people around him. He was about to meet two of the best friends that he'd ever had. One of them was Jesus, that he met on the road. As Ryan was reading, he was on his way to Damascus. And a bright light and a voice, and he's blind, and he says, "Who are you, Lord?" And you might go, "Oh, did he know it was God?" Well, in that day, the word Lord, the translation, especially lowercase Lord, would mean that you just were addressing someone who has power. That you would say Lord, not simply meaning like Yahweh, God. You'd be saying, Lord, like there's somebody with some power here that I'm addressing. Who are you, Lord? And the voice says, this is Jesus who you persecute. Like you can imagine them, dun, 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 music, because that is who he's been persecuting. Here is Jesus. He comes face to face. Here's the first thing we can notice after when Paul is blind, he's left there, and we're going to go over more of the details in a second. First thing we need to take from this, needing a friend is a dark place to be. He had people following him, but when this happened, nobody could understand what was going on in his life. See, it's easier to be numb or deny than to just sit in the darkness of how did I get here? It's easier to start blaming, which he doesn't do. It's easier to just get angry, which he doesn't do. It's easier to get on social media or a dating app. It's easier to fill that dark void with something temporary than to sit in the darkness of it and seek Jesus. Saul was literally blind. He was literally in a dark place. And I think that the dark place physically might be easier. I haven't been there blind, but I actually think that might actually be less painful than the darkness of being completely alone or feeling completely alone. It says that his companions, they led him into the town by hand in the New Living Translation. By hand. Can you imagine that? And we like to think that that's a very noble thing, but actually there was a lot of very honor society, very dutiful. It doesn't mean that they loved him. It means that they didn't want to leave him to die. So whether it's because they were great friends to him or whether because they were dutiful, they led him into town. And it says for 3 days he sat in darkness. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't drink. And then when God was speaking to Ananias, he said, Saul is praying to me right now. That he sat in that dark place of being alone, of being confused, of not having anyone understand or relate what was going on in his life right there. Of having a mission, having a plan, having a direction, having everything figured out for his life, and boom, something changed, and he is not only visionless physically, but visionless spiritually. He's alone, surrounded by people that like him, but I wouldn't say they don't know him, but they can't relate to what's going on. Maybe he can't even understand what's going on. Second thing about friends here. The simplest gift a friend can give is their presence. That's not a pun. The simplest gift a friend can give is their presence. I have to hand it to his companions that they stayed with him. That when Ananias went over there, God pretty much had to push him over there. But when Ananias went over there, somebody let him in the door. Earlier when it said he wouldn't eat or drink, I can't imagine that people weren't offering him food or drink. Again, could have been dutiful or could have been out of love. But the presence of people, even when someone doesn't want us there, can be one of the greatest gifts. That I can remember moments, maybe you can, of moments of just, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to explain what's going on in my life. But I don't want to be alone. From Saul's later writings, we can't think that he's an insecure person. That he's just falling apart. I need you here. No, what I imagine is that even in that moment when he wasn't asking people to stay, that people would. And the power of presence that when Ananias went over there, as I'll read in a second, something changed. I love being around my friends when they're at their best. When my friends are at their best, when there is joy, when there's all the things that I brag about, all the great memories. But am I willing to be around them when they're at their worst? And then the next question is, how long? You can be grumpy for a day. Or are you still on that? Are you still complaining about your blindness, Saul? You need to move on. Hey, I'll come back when you handle this. I think it's easy to be around people when they're at their best. I had a friend that I was helping move at one point. They were part of a new church that was going to be in Des Moines, Iowa, and I was over there to help them redo their roof so they could sell their house. And then later, and I was not much help, just in case you're taking notes on that part. I was not much help on that. Basically just throwing stuff away and getting nails out of the yard with a magnet. But I remember what she said when we were there to help them move after their house sold. And there they were. And she looked at me and she said, moving is when you find out who your real friends are. And I had never thought of that because I've moved so many times. I've packed a truck so many times, even in-town moves. And I thought back in that moment, and I'm thinking back now and getting a little distracted. That's why I have notes, but I think back and I go, those are people that help you move. They know that they might not see you again because you're moving, but they're there. There's power in presence. It's such a great gift. Third, some friends are sent to us. And this one requires you to kind of lean a little bit towards spirituality. This one requires you to lean towards the existence of God and the way that God plays a role in our lives here. But some friends are sent to us. Let me read the rest of this passage in Acts 9, verse 17. So Ananias went out and found Saul. He laid his hands on him, probably his shoulder, to pray for him, and said, "Brother Saul." We can just read over this, and maybe you've read this before, but when he said, "Brother Saul," he put his hand on someone who had murdered friends of his. But because God sent him there, he treated him like family. He said, "Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road, has sent me so that you might regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit." Instantly, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he regained his sight. Then he got up and was baptized. Afterwards, he ate some food and regained his strength. I go back to that brother Saul. Saul and Ananias had nothing in common at that point, outside of human characteristics, outside of Imago Dei, that they were made in the image of God. In fact, they had reasons to not be friends. But Ananias understood the idea of being sent. And when Paul received him, Ananias didn't just pray a quick prayer like before a meal. He didn't just pray this out of duty To say brother Saul was to say, you are part of a fellowship. God sees you, God loves you, and you are part of the family, and I accept you as part of this family. You know, it's big, like we love focusing on the parts where he's baptized, he finally eats some food, right? I just imagine he opened his eyes and there's like Thanksgiving just waiting for him. But like we can't miss the idea that when he says brother Saul, it's not a surname, it's not a suffix. It is a word of acceptance. It is to say, I don't even know you, but I like you. And I know enough because God sent me. And don't miss this, because we've all lived this one. That some people are part of our lives for a reason. Sent by God to serve, to give, to help, or just be present. It could be their job and you just happen to be there and then they are present and God sent them that day to have that shift on that day in that place that you said, I don't know what I would have done if they weren't there. I believe God sent them. And we can't always explain it. It's not logical, or maybe it's logical enough that we can unravel maybe what God has done. I don't think God's not like, put me in the credits of everything. I think that he's still going to do that whether we recognize it or not. Those are the best friends to have and the toughest friends to lose. Like when you move. Those are the toughest people because nothing fills that void. And we can go, we can go to church and we can go to the game, or we can talk to every stranger at the open house at school, or we can get on an app and find friends, or go to a Dungeons and Dragons meeting and try and find friends. But for some reason, the people that are sent into our lives, that just find their way into our lives, there's a rootedness that from day one, because God sent them, you are brother Saul to them. You're not just stranger. Because God sends us when we have a need. And when Saul was praying, he was saying, God, I have a need that I can't fill on my own. Saul needed to refresh. He needed to start again. And you could say he was forced to, but I think some of us in here have been in a dark place for a while. And God needs to hear us say, God, I need you to send someone for me. If you have one of those friendships in your life, I want you to be thankful. I want you to cherish them. I want you to thank them. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But if you don't have one of those friendships in your life, someone that you're like, this person was sent in my life. I didn't go looking for them, but I needed them. And it could be a family member. Or it could just be somebody that you don't see often. I have people in my life that I know God sent into my life, but I only see them at times like big moments where maybe I didn't expect it, or maybe they pop into my head and I'll send them a text. If you don't have one of those friends, here's just a few thoughts for you. One is to look around. Because I imagine that if God sent Ananias to me today, I would be too busy to see him. That I would be too busy with the things that I have in my life. Unless God were to blind me and force me to abandon all of my plans, I might totally miss out on people that God has sent in my life. And I say this because I've done this before, that I didn't even recognize the blessings that were all around me because of how busy I was. I didn't rest enough to be able to notice and appreciate that. Second, if you don't have a friend like that, nowhere in the Bible does it say that waiting is easy or fun. This is not comforting for you. But nowhere in the Bible does it say that waiting is easy or fun. But we do get to see that it's worth it. What the Bible does show us is that we can change ourselves while we wait. That we can become the kind of person that we desire to be, whether we have those people in our lives or not. That there are things that we can be upset, we can sit in that darkness, but what Paul was doing was allowing God to work in his life. Because I imagine that I would say, all right, God, it's been a day. You spoke pretty clear when you blinded me. but where you been? But it doesn't say Saul did that. It says what he did is he waited and he prayed. And he wouldn't even eat or drink knowing that something was coming. To start fresh socially, it's going to take a few steps. And here's the action steps if you want to take some notes. First, we need to find people to be thankful for and let them know. And that's part of the looking around. We need to find the people in our lives that we can be thankful for. And we need to ask ourselves this: do they know that I'm thankful for them? Because that's what often doesn't happen. Like, I love to assume that if something was wrong, someone would tell me, and I assume that they would assume the same thing that I'm assuming. Did you follow that? Like, my assumptions, I don't want to say the saying about when we assume. But what often happens is if I assume that this person knows how thankful I am for them in my life, for their words, for their presence, for the gift of just being a friend to me, for game nights, for text messages, for just being nice to my kids when I don't want to be nice. You know what I'm talking about. If we assume that people know how thankful we are, then we're wasting an opportunity to be a blessing to them. Because just maybe, if I can throw this out, and this is a big maybe, just maybe you were sent into their life. And just maybe you're somebody that God has sent as an Ananias to them at one point in their life. And we might assume that they're doing fine. But just maybe there's someone that God sent you into their life or is sending, that just showing them and telling them how thankful you are for them. I just want you to know when you do this, it means so much to me. Hey, I just want you to know that I have maybe 5 great friends and you are one of them. And I don't want to put extra on there. Or I just want you to know that, like, when we go see my blood relatives, I wish you were there. No, you can say that. I shouldn't say that on camera. But find a way to let people in your life know that you're thankful for them. And don't lie. You know what I mean? Don't just like buy them a card that has like nice things, or don't just say the same thing. I've gotten texts before when I'm with somebody and someone sent like I just want you to know you came to mind. I just want you to know you're a great friend. And they sent the same thing, copied and pasted to the other friend that I was with. We thought that was really funny. Does anybody else think that's funny? We were like, they're trying. You know what I mean? We'll give that to them. Second action step. Give yourself permission to call some people acquaintances. I don't think I need to explain this. Give yourself permission to identify some people as acquaintances. And here's why. Because you only have so much energy to give to close friendships. For years in my life, I can give a testimony on this. For years in my life, I was surrounded by acquaintances and had probably 0 friends. Because the friends I had got 0 time. They didn't even get my time later when I would say, I thought of you, but I didn't text because I was driving or something. And when something would occur, when something would go off the plan, I would be lonely as ever, but my phone was full of contacts of people. I was surrounded by people who liked me but didn't really know me. But it was kind of my fault because I didn't really let them get to know me. No matter who you are, you only have so much capacity. And if all we do is give all of our time to acquaintances, we will never have anything left to truly invest in the deep roots of friendships. And this could be a friendship that is in town. It could be a remote friendship. Praise God for technology, that we could be closer to the people that live 5,000 miles away than 5 doors away. Like, that's an option. Give yourself permission. And it's not like the friend zone. It's not like you send them a note and says, hey, I was thinking about it. I was looking at my life, and I just want you to know you're an acquaintance. Like, that's not what it is. There's no place that you mark it in your phone. It simply gives you permission to say, my expectations of them are not that we're going to be going deeper like some of the other people in my life. This might sound cruel, this might sound harsh, but there might be people that you feel an obligation to invest in and do things with that you just don't have it. And you're busy with them, but you're alone. Last, allow yourself to be known. And this is the one where it's the hardest one. The other two you could find probably on Dr. Phil. He wouldn't use the same Bible verses. Dr. Phil even a thing? I don't know. You could find this anywhere, the other two. But this one requires vulnerability that can only come if we know we are lovable. And the greatest hindrance, like we said before, to finding friendships today is admitting we need a friend. And often that's because we don't see ourselves as lovable. We don't see ourselves as worthy of love. But what changes is when we give our lives to Jesus, when we partner with Jesus, the one who God would rather die than lose relationship with you. Jesus, who came to earth, who left his throne to be with you, with us, finds you lovable. Not because you do a great job of hiding your faults from him. Spoiler, he knows them. Spoiler, he loves you. And if you are worthy and lovable to the God of the universe, and you get to a place in your life where you can believe that, then maybe you can start believing that you're worthy and lovable to have friends. And just maybe, you'll be willing to be known. Because until we're willing to be known, no one can know us. It sounds so silly. We can leave here and we can put whatever we want on our social media accounts, on our dating apps, or even on our t-shirts, so that people can know us. But to truly be known, we have to want to be known. And to want to be known, we have to believe we're lovable. Someone's going to disappoint you, but God will not. And there has to be that place that we can fall back on. There has to be that relationship, that friendship that sticks closer than a brother. Or else the other friendships will always fall short. It's kind of like how you can work and you can work and you can work and try to get somewhere. And you find out I've been running on a treadmill the whole time. I didn't really get anywhere. That if we miss the part that I am not lovable because I got likes, or because somebody is willing to hang out with me, or because I have all these fans around me, or because I got a great gift, or because I'm popular, because that can all burn, that can all go away. But I must be rooted in that I am lovable because the one who made me says you are worthy of my life. I hope you believe that today. So what were the 3 steps? And maybe you've done some of these already, or maybe one of these is easy and one of these is difficult. All I ask is that you consider at least one of them. First, find people to be thankful for and let them know. That could be as easy as a text message. It could be stopping at their house on the way home right now. Second, give yourself permission to call some people acquaintances. And third, allow yourself to be known. Because in order for you to know and be known by someone you trust, you have to know that you are loved and you are worthy by the one who made you. And then, of course, lovable and worthy to people around you. God might be sending you to be a friend, but he also might be sending you a friend too.